We are back. The Major League Journeymen, hosted by none other than yours truly, Daniel Charles Gargan, alongside Dax McCarty, our illustrious All-Star snub, and Alan Gordon, who only got an invitation to the All-Star game from me when we hosted the Gargs and Gordo show in Chicago a couple years ago, where actually we did have a run-in with you, Dax, and we had... We did an episode there in.
We should get some footage of that. That was
down by the Bean, right?
That was by the Bean in. God, am I already forgetting what it is? That Hyde Park down there.
Hyde Park, yep. Millennium Park, right?
Millennium, yeah.
Charles is a real thing. I never knew that. Dan Charles Gargan.
Charles, yes. Carlitos.
Everybody call you Chucky.
That was a fun interview. You guys were. It seemed like you guys were pretty hungover. Am I accurate in that statement?
Dude, we were not in good state of mind that morning. We had been through a bucket of coffee. I think. Did we meet you at like 7:45? I mean, just an absolute airball on our end to schedule that early.
Yeah, I don't know what time it was, but I know that I was kind of shocked at the bags under Gordo's eyes. I was like,
I'm always a little bit better when I'm hungover. So listen, I had a great performance. That's when I'm in my zone, dude. Like, I don't remember anything, but I'm absolutely on fire when I'm a little bit the perfect hungover. You know,
we did headbutt each other.
Statman Jack just pulled up. Statman Jack just pulled up a picture of you goons, and I think. In most of the bits you guys did, Gordo had sunglasses on the whole time.
Absolutely. We were going around Chicago trying to get people to give us chest bumps. So people would see us on the street, and I threw out a tweet like early on, like, hey, if anybody sees me in the street, don't say hello, just come up and chest bump me. And we had people like flying into us from all angles. It was actually pretty good. We were
on the beach.
Yeah, on the beach.
Yeah, that was good.
You remember that? So we had people. We were just asking people for their best Cristiano Ronaldo because it was against Madrid, and the rumor going around was Cristiano was going to be there and show up and pop out of the middle of nowhere, and so we had people doing their best celebration, their best Cristiano. So we had all kinds of like every walk of life would be like, who is Cristiano, or to like, he's my icon looking, they would show us
that was
best. It was pretty good.
That was a pretty fun All-Star game. You guys remember anything else about it? There was whoever like helped contribute to the equalizing goal against Real Madrid.
No, actually, I don't think. Nope. We didn't see any of that.
Maybe Statman Jack can, throw up a highlight of it. I don't know. It's not a big deal. It was some like small, unathletic ginger guy flying through the box, heading the ball. Probably should have scored against the post, but then Dom Dwyer.
Paul Scholes was there? What was he doing there?
The poor man's Paul Scholes was
there.
Paul
Scholes.
Poor man's Paul Scholes was there.
I can't wait to see.
It was so great. The poor man's Paul Scholes. I'm gonna speak from the third person perspective here. He was in the box and he was being looked at by all the Real Madrid players and kind of like they were just kind of smirking like, do we need to mark this guy? Is this guy marked? Like they were looking around kind of like, no. And then
that's how most MLS players looked at you too.
Exactly. But then when he's flying through the air in slow motion and he's like got like a 3-foot vertical and he's like slam dunking the ball against the post, they're like, all right, we probably should have marked that guy. That was fun.
We missed that mark.
That was I loved and hated that All-Star game because I went in the second half. That was the closest actual game that I've ever played in that was just strictly a training exercise. It was 5v5 in the attacking half for our attacking players against Madrid's defensive players, and then on the other side of the field, just their 5 or 6 best attacking players going against like 5 or 6 of our defenders and our midfielders. And so I'm caught in the midfield right in the middle of it. And it was just the fact that there were not more goals scored in that game is a miracle. But I absolutely trucked by Marcelo. And that guy, he's a very strong awesome human being. Yeah.
Dude, he's awesome. He's been one of my favorite defenders.
I ran into him and my whole body went limp instantly. Dude, I'm not kidding. I've never felt that in my life. That was fun.
So we have a self-proclaimed poor man's Zlatan, yours truly. We got self-proclaimed poor man's Paul Scholes. I am really interested. I want to guess. Dax, who do you think that
The poor man Dan Gargan, or
the poor man Dan Gargan,
or the rich man Dan Gargan?
Yeah, who's
Dan
the rich man Dan Gargan?
The rich man Dan Gargan.
I know you have an answer. That's why I can't wait to hear it.
Oh God! All right, Gordo, do you have an answer? I need like
Walker. I think you're gonna say Walker.
Kyle Walker. Oh my God! Stop it.
He's going to. Look,
He can't.
I called it.
Look, he can't say that. The poor man's Kyle Walker. He can't.
No.
No?
It's not a bad shout, though. I mean, if we're being honest.
In terms of pace,
In terms of just pace, power, raw athleticism.
I got one. And this is gonna be a big compliment. Dan Gargan is the poor man's Danny Carvajal.
I'll take that.
How do you like
hate
that? How do you like Gordo? Do you even know who that is? I don't think Gordo knows
He
who that
doesn't.
is.
There's no chance.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely
He's only
not.
like one of the most consistent right backs in the world the last like 15 years. He plays for that small team that we played against in the All-Star game, Real Madrid. You still don't know who he is. That's
Gordo
cool.
was ready to disagree just to disagree because
but I don't see any comparison.
Guards, you like that shout? That's a pretty good
Yeah,
shout.
no,
All right,
I'll take that.
hey, give it to us.
No, I don't have a great comparison. I just have a Bruce told me one time when we were going through contract negotiations, and he was like, I can only make miracles so often, and you're Danny Gargan, you're not Danny Alves, okay?
Hey, we should. You know what we should do? We should do an episode in the future where all of us just go through the entire episode in a Bruce impression.
That'd be great.
Maybe the episode we have Bruce on, all of us are just talking like Bruce.
Just four Bruces.
Yeah,
that
just
would
four
be pretty
Bruces
good.
going back and forth.
So, Dax, you played in that All-Star game. I'm going to DC tomorrow for the game. I'll be there for the skills competition and then against Arsenal on Wednesday night. You've played in this. Are you a fan of playing against a Premiership team or a club, or do you like the East Coast, West Coast rivalry?
Dan, that's a great question, buddy. The problem with my answer is going to be that I have no context for the East-West thing.
You've seen it. You've seen it. You've watched it.
I've seen it. I watched it. I thought it was cool. I thought it was fun. I think I prefer playing against the international team more, just because if you have the East-West thing, like that's cool. That's a cool spectacle, but like it doesn't mean anything, right? Like I think for the MLB All-Star game, it's like, doesn't it mean something?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it means something. So I don't know how you could
Isn't
realistically.
it home field advantage?
Home field advantage for the World Series.
That's
which is
cool. What's up? Oh, Statman Jack, thank you. So in 2014, I guess they cut that off, so it doesn't mean anything anymore. So that's, for me, it's like the East-West thing is cool. The only reason I would like that is because it would get more guys recognition. More guys would be able to be All-Stars, and I think that would be cool, and it would also help some guys' pocketbooks with the All-Star bonuses. That's great. But the games that I played in 2 All-Star games, Real Madrid and Tottenham. I like that format because obviously, you get these big teams coming in and, you tap into the audience and the fandom that a lot of these international teams have here in the U.S., the presence that they have here in the U.S. And I think that definitely spikes up interest a little bit more. I think there's a certain level of respect between both teams where both teams know it's an exhibition game, right? I mean, you want to put on a show, you want to put on a spectacle. But I look at like the NBA All-Star game, and they switched up the format in the NBA All-Star game to make it, I think, a little bit more exciting. So
it's captain's picks, right?
Yep, and it goes quarter by quarter now, which is a pretty cool format. It's a pretty cool process. But like, I used to watch the NBA All-Star game, and it just went totally down the drain for me when these teams, they wouldn't even try until the last 2 minutes of the game, right? And it's like, there's no defending. I think when you play an international team in the MLS All-Star game, it's like, hey, we're going to play hard, but with respect. We're not going to kick each other, right? We're going to put on a show. It's going to be a spectacle. So I like the format of the international competition. Do you guys?
Gordo?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of things you're saying, Dax. I don't think you can get it right. I would like to see, I think the reason that we integrated a big team from Europe is where our league was back then. And we needed a big ticket. Plus, I don't think we had, enough quality. I mean, we had quality, but I don't think we had enough quality to fill two full rosters plus other guys. And I say that with all due respect. But I think our league is much more developed now. So I would like to see an East versus West, but like you said, there's a ton of examples in every other. I don't know how hockey is. I don't think I've ever tuned in. I know they got a good skills competition, but the game always just seems lackluster. So I think that the game is going to be more quality against a big ticket, quality opponent from Europe. But these teams are here all summer long now. They weren't back then. You can see Arsenal, you can see Man United, you can see Real Madrid. They're all playing here. They've done it the last 8 to 10 years, and so there's a lot of access to them. I don't know if you can get it right. So I don't mind where it is, but for a lot of reasons you said, Dax, recognition, pocketbooks, you'd like to see us field 2 teams against each other. That would be cool. I just don't know what the quality would look like.
For me, I liked originally the idea of the Premiership side or a club coming in, but I also really think that the All-Star game is a bunch of nonsense anyway, and it's for the fans and it's for fun.
It's such an American thing, huh?
It's
what I mean?
And nonsense is probably not the right way to describe it. It's not a game. So to what Gordo's saying, you can't. I think it's tough for you to get it to what you want it to be. So then that leads me to say, lean into this idea that it is an all-star game and it is an exhibition and it's a spectacle and have fun with it. I would love to see more players from Major League Soccer on the field. To be honest, I really don't care about Arsenal and I don't care who's good for Arsenal. I want to see Major League Soccer players that have earned the opportunity to be named as an all-star. So for me, if I would go back and redo it or going into it again, I did like? I did like the Liga MX All-Stars versus US MLS All-Stars. I thought that was a cool concept, and I thought that there was some bite to the game because there's a bit of pride to it, and it takes the All-Star level up, but it also gives a competitive nature to it. Whereas when you bring in Arsenal, they're a set team, they're a set club, they're in the middle of their summer tour that's selling tickets, and that's what they're there for. They obviously got to get fit, but there's not the same responsibility that they have with MLS and their All-Stars, because the All-Stars want to get out of the game safe and healthy and back to their teams that's meaningful. So I think there's a way to do it.
And it started in the skills competition, and it was really cool because the Liga MX players versus our players, they wanted to win. It looked like it was competitive, and then it rolled over, to your point, to
into
the
next game.
Game. Yeah,
I think that plays into a little bit more of the fun nature of what an all-star game can provide. It was obviously beneficial for MLS to bring that back, right? We have one of our young goalkeepers. He's competing, Ben Martino. He's competing in goalie wars, right?
Dude,
and that's sick. That's so cool. It was all we could talk about in the locker room for a week. Strategy, watching highlights, videos, how much fun it is. That's cool, man. And you know what they should bring back? They should bring back an old school style shootout. At the end of the game, if the All-Star game and Arsenal, if they're tied, bring back the old school style shootout, go through a tutorial with the Arsenal players and the MLS guys and be like, this is how it's done. And if you guys are tied at the end of regulation, this is what we're going to do. But that would be
Preki chopping the keeper.
Exactly. But that would play into the fun, nature and I think All-Star games, right? Especially in soccer, it's kind of looked at as in the rest of the world as kind of a piss take, right? And fans might kind of make fun of it. Why don't you just play into it more? Be like, hey, look at this. We're going to accept that it is a wacky American thing that we do, and we're going to make it so fun you can't turn away.
Right.
That would be cool for me. I would really like to see them implement fun things like that.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying, Gordo, is it's tough to get it right. Major League Soccer was not there when they were doing the Eastern-Western Conference battles. They didn't have the credibility that they have now. And I think that they could go back to that and be creative with it and lean into this American construct of the All-Star game and probably breathe some life back into those ideas, the things that you're talking about, Dax. And I would like to see that, because I'd like to see more Major League Soccer players out there. I wanted to ask you, Dax, if you felt like there are players within the league that come to your mind right away that should be all-stars.
I love this question.
You'd want
an
them
all-star
on
snub?
Yeah.
So because you were using dial-up in the last couple episodes, and we had to kick you off hosting duties, which a lot of people on the interwebs are talking about who's the better host, you or me. But we don't need to talk about that right now.
Well, there's a reason I'm going to the All-Star game. It's for hosting this MLJ pod. So
that's neither here nor there. But we talked about like our favorite number 10s in MLS, and this is a huge All-Star snub for me. This guy Ryan Gauld for Vancouver, huge fan of this guy, big fan of this guy, and his numbers back up the eye test with him being able to make that team tick. Vanni Sartini, the guy who went on stage and sang a Nickelback song. I don't know if we ever talked about that, but we have to talk about that. Jack, we have to talk about that. That is easily the top 3 coolest moment for a coach in MLS history, and I will die on that hill.
Except that he's singing Nickelback?
No, that's even cooler. That's even cooler. I love it. He was singing Rockstar, and his performance was absolutely fantastic. That's a top 3 cool moment for coaches in MLS history. But Ryan Gauld...
I'm cutting Dax off. You missed it. This was another great exercise where Dax threw out this question, then he gave all the answers to him. And then he's like, who do you got, Gordo? Continue.
I gave it to you first, and you said Ricky Puig, and then you were like, all right.
Going to do like a back and forth.
You said Ricky Puig because he gave your son a jersey, and that was your answer, and that was your reasoning. So I had to be the adult and the actual proper analyst and be like, oh, you know what? All these number 10s I play against in the East, they're all incredible. So this is my list. Bam, 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 bam.
Okay,
but Gargs, I also want to shout out. I'm a huge homer. I apologize. You guys can
Shocker.
You guys can crap on me all you want, but Nashville SC, we have the least goals scored against us in the league. Walker Zimmerman is obviously one of the best defenders in the league, deserving All-Star. Joe Willis, our goalkeeper, Jack Mayer, both of them I think deserved a shout. I think that the defenders that did make the All-Star team, all of them are deserving in their own right. But to your point, Dan, East versus West would get these guys more opportunities. There would be more All-Stars because there are snubs all the time. There always are. So Jack and Joe Willis from Nashville SC, yes, I'm a homer, but those guys are more than deserving to be there.
You are. I'm getting really tired of you using this platform to just get brownie points in the locker room. But I agree with you.
Do I back it up or not with facts?
You do. Hey, listen, the only problem is I do agree with you. But hey, did you guys read that article? Kind of like the foul article, the most snubbed MLS player of all time.
Was it Alan Gordon in the All-Star game?
Alan Gordon. 15 years straight.
Was this a footnote of that article?
Not one All-Star game.
It's in the fine print.
You got to read really far down past all the ads.
Gordo, do you think if you were in the skills competition and any of these other guys were using their weak foot, that you could win any of the competitions in the skills competition against them?
My body now or in my prime?
In your prime, the passing accuracy stuff, any of it.
That's so disrespectful. As a phenomenal. I'm not even going to answer.
You know what I'd really like to see at the All-Star game is I'd like to see a 5v2 on
I was going to say Gordo would be an elite 5v2 player. That was his
you
best.
may be invited into the All-Star 5v2 game, and that's the nicest compliment I will probably ever give you, but it's deserved.
When he first got to Chicago, I was actually my jaw was on the floor watching this guy play 5v2. He's a different player. He looked like Messi.
He is a different player, and he also plays 75% of the time with a cup of coffee in his hand, which was even more impressive because he didn't spill it, and he also had the balls to have his coffee out there knowing that he was never going to go in the middle, and he very rarely went in the middle.
True story.
Impressive.
One time I saw him doing a 5v2 rondo, and he did the Michael Jordan. He had his eyes closed for the entire rondo. I was like, how is this guy seeing anything right now? It was incredible. Gordo, you need to clip this, all right? This is the only time we're ever going to praise you for your actual skill on the field.
Gordo, is there anybody at the All-Star game that you are excited to see on the field?
Have they released the roster yet?
About a month ago, yeah.
Oh, okay. I haven't had a chance to look.
Hey, Gordo, by the way, the All-Star game is on Wednesday.
Ricky Puig? I want to see my boy Ricky.
Of course he does.
I was going to ask you, is there any players in the league that you thought got snubbed? But that was clearly a question that you would not have an answer for. So I'll jump in.
What about this guy Reynoso? Is he on the squad?
That he's not on the squad. That's a great answer, Gordo. Too bad he's missed half the season because he was down.
Yeah, he's only played like 7 games. And
I know, but
he's on
fire. He's on fire. I was just wondering. You asked me who I would want to see.
Yeah,
I answered the question. I would want to see him. I think. I love lefties, and
Gordo, do yourself a favor. This guy's so nasty, Reynoso. Go look at his latest assist for Minnesota and the latest goal that they scored. Did you see his assist to Pookie? And then did you see the goal he scored against LAFC?
Yes.
Probably the best team goal scored in MLS this year. Just
filthy. I called that game, Dax. His assist to Pookie was one of the sharpest, quickest turns I've seen in a long time.
This guy's class, man.
Eyes in the back of his head. I was blown away in seeing it live.
It was so good that he was literally 5 seconds ahead of every player on the back line. There's only one reason a forward gets that open. It's because it's and you got to give a little credit with the timing of the run, right? He knows where he's going, but to see him and play it that early was freaking ridiculous.
Dax, have you played Austin yet?
Not this year. I don't think we played them this year. We played them last year.
So the only other player that I was going to mention, there's plenty of, but what do you think of Danny Pereira? He's a special player, and I think that it's kind of shocking that he wasn't on the All-Star game this year. Granted, Austin's not had a great year, but
I think every time
I've seen him play, I'm blown away at how good he is with his space, his cover, the coverage, his really kind of importance in the attack too is pretty impressive, man.
I'm really glad you actually brought him up, Dan, because I think that, the Major League Journeymen pod, we're not only going to be positive towards Nashville SC players, we're positive towards all players, even young players. I want to blow these guys up. I want to make sure that people know our opinions on some of these up-and-coming young guys in the league. Danny Pereira, when we played against Austin, I was blown away by this guy.
He's incredible.
He has everything. First of all, I think he's going to be in Europe within 2 years. And second of all, he's got everything to be a top D-mid in MLS for years to come if he wanted to stay. And if I'm Austin, I'm throwing a bag at this guy. I am locking him down to a long-term contract as soon as possible because I think that everything that they do in terms of their build-up, in terms of their high-pressing actions defensively, everything that Josh Wolf wants to accomplish on the field and how they play, Danny Pereira is the perfect fit. And I think he's young. I think he's got a really bright future ahead of him. I'm really actually happy you said that because last time we played against him, I chatted with him a little bit after the game, and I told him I thought he had a really bright future ahead of him, and he wanted to trade jerseys with me. So I'm going to grab my Pereira jersey that I have somewhere up in the closet, and we're going to throw it back on the wall here. We're going to get the jerseys back up there, and that's why I'm really glad you brought him up. But yeah, I think this guy, very underrated. I think that he will be an all-star very soon or be in Europe.
That's pretty cool. That's a cool feeling when a young player, game respects game, right?
Dude, Gordo, it was so cool. Cool. When you're an old guy, I got to tell you, it's hard to know if you play against these young up and coming kids who you're like, man, that guy's going to be a stud. It's hard to know how much they've followed MLS, and how much they know about MLS. And just that, some people don't like trading jerseys. Some guys don't ask for jerseys and whatnot. But I think I take it as a sign. If I'm trading with a friend of mine, a guy I used to play with, great. But when a young guy asks you for your jersey, I mean, it's such a surreal feeling, You're almost like, wow, this kid might have watched me play back in the day when I could actually run and do some good things on the field, and it was a cool feeling, especially coming from a kid who I rate very highly.
Yeah. And you know what? It's something that I've begun to realize after getting older, and you kind of go back into, certain situations, whether it's an appearance and these kids are watching, and they were young when you were in your prime, and you're still running around pretty good, but you've been playing for a long time, dude. These guys were 3-4 years old when you were a rookie, right?
Thanks.
and they're soccer lovers. The kids that are really good in this country, if they're domestic U.S. players, they come from soccer families who live, die, and breathe, the soccer. So they were watching. So that's a really really cool compliment because they, for him to do that, he did it for a reason, which is awesome.
Dax, you got a couple All-Stars on your roster in Nashville, but you played the big dogs of the Eastern Conference, Cincinnati, and took a fat L. But it seemed, well, I'll let you talk about this because I would love to hear your opinion on the yellow cards, ultimate red cards that changed the complexion of the game. I really couldn't believe it watching it and seeing some of those calls, but you're on the field. Do you feel like the 3-1 result was reflective of the game?
Well, I think it was reflective of the game, after we went down 2 men, right? I mean, that's very difficult to hold on to a result. We were 1-1 going into the, whatever it was, 65th minute.
Right.
It's very difficult to hang on to a result against a really good team in their home stadium when you have 11 on 11. It's
yeah. What do you think of the environment?
It's incredible. Cincinnati's done wonderful things. It's almost hard to believe that Cincinnati was a 3-time wooden spoon winner back to back to back. And you look at them now, it's almost like a totally different team. It's almost like they won 3 wooden spoons in a row, which is the worst team in the league with the worst record, least amount of points. Yep. And then they just said, all right, we're going to be an expansion team all over again, right? Yep. We're going to make the right signings. We're going to hire the right coach. We're going to hire the right sporting director. And now we're a new team again. And it's actually night and day. And now that they have their new stadium, they've got an unbelievable training facility, I've heard. And it's just
their training facility is really nice as well.
They've gotten every single big decision right, I think, for the last 2 or 3 years. And it started with bringing in Lucho Acosta, who we talked about on the last pod, easily one of the best 10s in MLS. And everything they do goes through him. Pat Noonan is pulling all the right strings, pushing all the right buttons. So look, full credit to Cincinnati. I think we're developing a really nice rivalry with them. I think it starts on the field. I think it kind of spills over into off the field. There's good banter and a mutual respect, I think, between our fan bases. It was a rough week for us at Nashville SC, right? We had 3 games. We had Chicago away, Philly at home, ending with Cincinnati away, and we lost all 3. And in the Philly and Cincinnati games, I actually thought we played pretty well in both of those games, but we are, right now at a point where we're just beating ourselves. We aren't allowing these really good teams to step on the field and play us off the pitch, right? And it's just, we're beating ourselves. And look, guys, I could talk about the refs. I think at the risk of making excuses, I don't want to go there because there's nothing for me to gain from that. Honestly, I think people watch the game. They can make their opinion about the referees one way or the other. But for me, I think you guys will agree with this statement I'm about to make. The calls that you don't get in one game usually even out in other games. So look, we went on a 10-game unbeaten run earlier this year. We were probably getting some pretty fortunate calls going our way, right? If I look back at the games and you say, all right, well, on the balance of refereeing decisions, maybe we got more good ones than bad ones. The last couple games, I think we've gotten more bad ones than good ones, but that's not the reason why we lost the games. We have lost our composure in the last 2 games, and we've shot ourselves in the foot, and we've beaten ourselves. So could you ask questions about some of the yellow cards handed out? Sure. But at the end of the day, we are a veteran team. We're more experienced than that. We know better. And look, when the margins are really thin, and you guys know they are against the top teams, right? Philly's a top team. Cincinnati's a top team. When the margins are thin and the game is in the balance and it can teeter one way or the other, we didn't finish a multitude of chances against Philly. That's what hurt us, right? Against Cincinnati, we went down 2 men. And when we had a result in our hands against the league leaders, and that's the reason why we lost, not the referees. And so I'm not worried. I know that we've had a little bit of a tough run here, but I have full faith in our team to use this Leagues Cup break, which actually comes at a great time for us, to get healthy, regroup, get Anibal Godoy back from the Gold Cup, and I think we're going to be okay and make a good run here at the end of the year.
Why didn't Schaffelberg start?
Not sure. I don't know, man. I think that
he's a good
player, man. He's been so electric for us, and I think that we have a lot of good options when it comes to rotating our attacking players. And I think that he is excellent when he starts games for us. I think he's excellent when he comes off the bench for us, because if you're a defender, Gargs, you're a right back. You're playing. You're in the 60th
That's the Canadian,
minute.
right?
Yes, he's a guy. He's a kid who scored against the U.S. But the last thing you want to see in the 65th minute as a right back who might be a little bit winded is Jacob Schaffelberg coming on to be able to run at you for 25 minutes. Yeah. So I think he's one of the fastest players in the league. And so whether he starts or comes off the bench, I think he's good, and I think he's dangerous, and I think he gives us a different element in a different dimension. So he's young. He's eager to learn and eager to get better and eager to improve. And he's another guy who I think is going to be a very crucial part of our stretch run here at the end of the season.
How was Bupenza?
He was good. It was tough to say, though. We were down 2 men at that point. So, look, he looks like a good player. He looks like he has an absolute cannon of a left foot.
Dude, I saw that one pill that he hit from 40 out.
He hit one from 30 or 40 out that stung the palms of Joe Willis. But, yeah, look, I don't have...
Stung the paws of Joe
You like that? Hey, I'll let you have that one for the next time you call a game, all right?
Oh, my gosh.
I think that it would be foolish of me, especially seeing the moves that Chris Albright has been able to make for Cincinnati. It'd be foolish of me to say that, this guy's not going to be a very good player for them. I think that his judgment has been very good in the past in terms of recruitment. And he scored on his debut. So, what can you say? The guy's 1 for 1. But again, I think there needs to be a caveat that the game was crazy open. We were down 2 players. We were actually pushing forward, trying to get an equalizer down 2 men. And shout out to my guy, Sean Davis. There were a few plays there where he was like a free safety back there. Cincinnati's running at him like 3v1, and he's just retreating all the way back to the goal. So it's been a tough week for us, no question. But I'm excited about the last couple games of the season, man. I'm excited to attack these games and see where we end up in the final.
What's up next standings for you guys for Nashville?
Leagues Cup. We have Colorado and I believe Toluca.
Coming out to Colorado, big guy.
We got no. They're coming here, baby. Because of our success last year, we get to host the 2 games, which is great. So, honestly, Gargs, I haven't looked past Leagues Cup. I'm just trying to focus on, winning this competition. Hopefully, we go for it. I think it'll be an interesting, fun competition. Something that hopefully will be a success for MLS. And after that, I think we have 10 games left. We'll attack those 10 games after Leagues Cup.
I know for a fact that you have looked a little bit past Leagues Cups because you got, where are you going on August 30th?
Yeah. Good point. We have looked past Leagues Cup. We got Inter Miami on the docket.
Inter Miami on the docket, and
Has there been any news surrounding Inter Miami recently?
I don't know. There's been a lot of rainstorms. The GOAT has officially arrived. Did you guys watch the unveiling last night? Did you?
I know for a fact Gordo did.
Night. Okay, so
I've seen a bunch of Instagram clips.
So partial. That's partial credit.
Before
we get to Messi, what about Busquets? Big deal, small deal, medium deal. Gordo, what's your thought on bringing him in?
Man, I have my gut instinct, but this, I'm gonna go with my gut. Okay,
good.
When have you ever not?
That's good. My gut's getting a lot bigger, by the way.
You have a lot more in that gut now.
That's right. So here's what I'll say. This goes without being said, but I'm going to say it anyway. This guy is one of the most decorated, phenomenal. I don't know how he does it. Nobody knows how he does it, but he's the smartest guy in the field. That's how he does it. But he's been surrounded by a great team his entire career. He's played for Barcelona or Spain his entire career. Yeah. So he can do that job really, really, really well. What I've seen from players that come from big teams and were phenomenal, a little bit older, played with a few of them, watched a few others. Mm-hmm. It's not the same league. It's not the same team. So I think that he will expose. He will leave Miami very, very exposed, because here's the difference. He is going to have to cover a ton of ground. He's going to have to defend more than he's ever defended in his entire career.
Is he?
Barcelona is built to keep the ball, and they used to win it back real fast, and he was good at that. But in the MLS, you go through stretches you travel somewhere, it's hot as hell, and you have to, and he can do the running or whatever, but I just think he's very slow, and I think that he will make it a lot more difficult for Miami to regain control of the ball. And I think that he will leave them a little exposed.
Gordo, you were on that Galaxy team when we played Barca, right?
Yes.
Do you remember seeing Busquets?
Yes, he's phenomenal.
Dude, for me, he was the best player that I've ever seen live on the same field. He was incredible.
He will do great. He will do great in that aspect when they have the ball.
Gordo, this is usually I just disagree with Gordo. He's right and he's wrong.
Okay.
In the same time. Okay. So Gordo's right that physically, if we're talking pure, like physically running around the field, winning tackles, covering distance, Busquets, that's not the player that he is anymore. And to a certain extent, he was never that player. But
yeah, I was going to say that wasn't really his thing.
It wasn't, but he could do it, right? And that is not going to be his thing. But Gordo's wrong because that's not Busquets' concern. That is Tata Martino's number one issue and number one concern is how do I set a team up around generational. Busquets is a generational talent, one of the best defensive midfielders to ever live and to ever play the game. And the reason he is considered that is because of the system that he was in at Barcelona, which just accentuated all his strengths and it hid all of his weaknesses, which he doesn't have many, by the way.
And we said this about Messi in the same exact context.
They're one and the same. They're
Right.
They're not one and the same, but in terms of how Tata Martino sets this team up, that is going to be the difference between this team being unstoppable and this team being loose. They have to surround these guys with runners and with workers.
Yes,
and
for sure.
It's funny because it's a little bit of a catch-22, right? You want to surround these guys with workers and runners and guys that are going to fight and claw to win the ball back so that Messi and Busquets can do their thing. But Messi and Busquets also thrive with players who technically have to be proficient, right? Messi has to be
all the best players.
They do that, but they don't need them. But that is how you get a team to function in a way that is going to be successful, right? And so you can have Messi and Busquets on the field and Jordi Alba and all these players who want to play tiki-taka, but if you're not going to be able to have guys work their butts off and win the ball back and defend, because I can tell you one thing, Messi will not defend right now, and he shouldn't. If Inter Miami, if Tata Martino thinks that he's going to be talking tactics of defensive principles with Messi,
no,
I think
that's not going to happen for sure.
It's kind of the same. It's kind of the same with Busquets. He's going to obviously play a little bit more of an integral role, but look, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know how they're going to play. But if I'm thinking about it logically, you have to set the team up with 3 center backs and 2 other midfielders in the middle of the park to run for Busquets. You know, you need a Gattuso type of player next to him. Obviously not Gattuso, but you need someone who's going to be winning tackles and duels. Exactly. You need a dog in there. You need a Marcelo Sarvas in there. You need a Juninho in there, like you guys had your great LA Galaxy teams. You need one of those guys in there to help him. And then with Messi, he's going to need players around him in the attacking half of the field that are going to be able to help him combine and create chances and score goals. So, I think Gordo's right and wrong. That's pretty impressive, Gordo. Congratulations.
I mean, it's a good problem for him to have, but it's hard to solve.
It is a hard problem to solve.
Yeah, but here's the thing. We're talking about arguably, in my opinion, the best manager that's ever been in Major League Soccer in Tata Martino.
Ooh, that's spicy. Ooh, that's so spicy.
Hot take.
That's fine.
Hot take.
One, he's already managed these guys. 2, he knows the league. He knows the league inside and out, and he did some pretty impressive stuff in a very short amount of time, not being involved in the league. And everybody that you talk to that has played for Tata Martino in this league will tell you the same thing. Absolutely blown away by his tactical understanding and his just ability to communicate the way that the game is going to unfold and the way that these results are going to shape out. And I personally, so I called Atlanta for those 4 years that he was there. He would tell you how the game was going to happen before the game happened. And it was spot on, almost eerie. And he is that good. So yes, you're right. He's going to have to figure out.
Can I ask you a question? Because you are the Atlanta United expert here.
Yeah.
Tata Martino in Atlanta, Tata Martino in Miami. The defensive principles that made Atlanta United so successful, what were they in Atlanta?
Well, they worked, and they had press.
They worked, and did they press the opposition into submission every time they lost the ball? Miguel Almiron, one of the best number 10s that this league has ever seen, in the fulcrum for everything Atlanta did well. Yeah. What was one of like the key principles that made him so successful?
Well, he ran. Yeah, of course, he ran
like crazy.
But Dax, they also had Joseph Martinez, who did no defensive work, who was already on the field, and he figured out ways.
None. Joseph did no defensive work.
Joseph did zero defensive work.
I agree.
He was incredible. And as soon as the ball turned over, he went from 0 to 100, but he did not do any defensive work. And now you could potentially have him and Messi on the field, which is going to be its own thing.
That's my point. My point is...
And they had a Lorenowitz who would just run and defend.
Correct. I think that it's fair to talk about Tata Martino like that, 100%. But we're talking apples and oranges here in terms of personnel. Messi is not going to be your striker.
Agreed. No, Inter Miami is not Atlanta United. He's not going to be your 9. He's going to be your. He's going to be an attacking player somewhere. I don't know where you put him. You just put him in the middle of the field. You drop him in there and say, "Hey, do your thing." Put him in the country. I think you're okay with it. At least I am.
But the difference for me is that Inter Miami is going to score a boatload of goals with Messi on the field. There is zero doubt about that. How many goals they concede, that is going to be the difference between success and failure. So I'd be curious to know and see
they
what
still
Tata
have a
does.
lot of work, right? Like they still have a lot of work in roster construction. I don't think it's going to happen this year.
No,
I don't think
this year's a wash.
This
year's a wash.
But I would, if I'm a betting man, I'm going to bet on Messi and Tata Martino and them figuring it out and being pretty successful while they're here.
Can I change gears here a bit before we move off the Messi talk and tell you guys a fun little nugget? You know how I'll take any moment to talk about my wife in a fun, positive light. But my wife Jen, she's been extremely supportive my whole career. She'll come to every home game. She'll be there on the sidelines with the boys. She's made a couple fun trips every now and then to visit some girlfriends. And if we happen to be playing in LA or, wherever it may be in New York, she'd make the trip up. She'd come to the game. She'd enjoy herself. Well, fast forward. Let's rewind a couple weeks back when Inter Miami makes the announcement that Messi's going to Miami. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. August 30th. Great. We get to go there and play them. Jen had talked about, going down to Miami. I've got some family in Fort Lauderdale. I've got, my parents are in Orlando. I've got some family that live down in Miami. And, we were talking about her going down and, maybe staying with my cousin who lives down there, and my parents coming down and they could go to the game. And I was like, oh, that's great. A couple weeks ago, I find out that she is going down to Miami, but not to stay with my cousin, because her and a couple of the other wives and girlfriends on the team have decided to make a girls trip out of it. And they're going to come down just to watch the game against Inter Miami and have a nice little girls trip down in Miami. And I have my mortgage that Gordo provided me with this beautiful house I'm in that says that her and the girls would not be making the trip down if one Leo Messi wasn't there. So shout out to Leo. He got my wife down to
for bringing women to Miami all across the country.
All across the country, but specifically a lot of women from Nashville on August 30th will be in the stadium. So
it's usually the opposite direction. Most women are heading to Nashville. Now you're telling me that they're leaving Nashville on their way out.
I told Jen, if she wanted to see Messi so bad at some point, I could have taken her on a nice little vacation to Paris or to Barcelona, but she had a sneaking suspicion he'd be in Miami eventually. So
that's great.
All right. Feet to the fire. Does Messi win an MLS Cup here in his time?
Oh, Gargs.
No. Yes or no?
100% no.
100% no.
No.
That's all.
Yes,
that's
he does.
Limited odds.
He's got He's got 2 years, dude. They're not going to. You already said they're not going to do it this year. They're going to.
And he's got 2 years after that. So this year plus 2, right?
This year plus 2.
The rest of this season plus 2.
Anything's possible.
Gordo already said no. I say yes, he does.
You said 100%.
Vegas odds are. Vegas odds are not good.
Okay, I agree with the Vegas odds being low, but I think he does it. There's no reason to doubt this guy in anything that he does, and Yes, he's older. Yes. 8 months ago, or however long ago, 6 months ago, guy won the World Cup and he was the best player at the World Cup. So we're not talking about a normal designated player. We're not talking about a normal guy here. We're talking about
human.
We're talking about the greatest player of all time who, oh, by the way, the amount of young up and coming South American players that are going to want to come here and play with him. And by the way, MLS, I got news for you. There's going to be some rule changes. If I was a betting man, I would bet on some rule changes here coming up in the next year.
Like you can absolutely not foul Messi.
No, you can't look him in the eye. You cannot look him in the eye.
Exactly. If you look at him, it's a penalty.
Yellow card if you look at him.
Dude, so the first time I saw Beckham on the field, it was probably the only time where I was like, whoa, that's David Beckham. And a ball got played in between the two of us, and I got to it first, and he slid through 2 feet, studs up, and looked to break both of my legs. And I turned around, and I was like, what the? And I was furious, like pissed. And it went like this, like starstruck for 2 seconds, and then he tried to take me out, and I went immediately back into like battle mode. And I'm wondering, Dax, have you thought about that moment of seeing Messi on the field yet? Like, has that crossed your mind? Are you guys talking about that at all? Because I think it does play into the expectations of whether or not he'll win an MLS Cup.
All of us have played against Messi, right?
I haven't. Never.
You haven't?
But I have thought about that, Gargs. And yeah, it's going to be surreal because this is a guy who I have always considered the greatest of all time. And when you put it in perspective, like the amount of players that I've watched play, the amount of players that have played professional soccer, the amount of high-level games that I've been able to not just take part in, but watch as well overseas in Europe and South America.
Yep.
The fact that we're talking about the guy, we're not even talking about like the 0.001%. We're talking about like the 0.0000000. Statman Jack can get on that, but like we are talking about the best of the best, right? The best player that's ever put a pair of boots on. Yeah, it's going to be kind of crazy and kind of surreal. And as a player, you pride yourself on like being professional, not getting a little bit overawed by the moment. But I can't help but feel like there will be a small part of me that when we are in Miami, whether I'm starting or coming off the bench, whether I even step on the field, that won't be like, the greatest player, in my opinion, that's ever graced the soccer field is 10 feet away from me and playing in MLS. It's going to be a pinch me moment for sure. And I think it will play into like, if I'm playing against him, am I gonna want to go into a hard tackle with this guy? Like, I don't want to be the guy that like is like, hey, I might have stepped on Messi's foot and hurt his toe. You know what I mean? Like,
so
I think that does play into it a little bit. There
Gordo,
will be a massive respect factor.
Were you on the team, Gordo? Were you on the team with Beckham? I think you were when Adrian Serio
What a moment.
tried to break Beckham in half.
I was on Dallas at that point.
Yeah.
So were you on that field, Gordo, or were you there?
I was on the field.
Do you remember that?
Vaguely, like everything else.
Okay.
Funny enough, Dan, I just watched a clip of that maybe like a week ago.
Okay, so the Athletic.
It was in Dallas, right, Dax?
It was in Dallas.
They just put that article out.
I grabbed Beckham right away because he was going after him.
He was.
So I'm in that clip holding him back. And
So
he lost his freaking mind.
It's always about Gordo.
For me, Serio's an idiot for doing that, personally. That's my personal opinion. But do you think that the league needs to take a different approach with Messi in the way that he's either protected or the game is called around him? Athletic put that article about, the Jordan rules, like you can't touch him, whatever. Do you feel like he needs that attention? Or do you think that players are smart enough to manage the game and be respectful of his legacy, but also of managing themselves?
I think naturally the refs are going to call it in favor of Messi. Okay, if you watch, it's going to be a natural move for them. I think it would be a shame if they put some kind of rule in. Unless this guy started
they're not changing the rules of soccer to protect him on the field.
Right, it's not going to be
Gordo.
official.
They're going to protect him more than they have protected any other player.
Yes, they will. That's natural,
and they should.
Yes, they should.
They should? You think they
Because
should?
Yes, of course they should. And I'm not talking about calling fouls that aren't there. I'm not talking about, and by the way, Messi's never been a diver, but if he was, I'm not talking about calling his dives. I'm just saying, yes, of course he should be protected. This is such a massive moment for the game in this country. And by the way, for as big as David was for MLS, that's apples and oranges comparing these two, especially as players. David was always up for a scrap, and you guys could probably speak to that more so than me. He was sometimes he was the one, like to your point.
He was definitely
sometimes he was the one instigating
for sure.
and dishing out punishment, right?
Yep.
Messi isn't that guy, and he never was, and he never will be. So yes, when Messi's on the field, when he's on the ball, when he gets fouled, even if it's a small foul, big foul, whatever it is, he needs to be protected because ultimately the investment that Major League Soccer is making in Messi is a big one. And by the way, as competing against him, right? I want to compete against the best. I don't want some goon flying into a horrible tackle on him to send a message and putting this guy out for months. I don't want that. Yeah. I want to play against the best. I want to be able to say that I played against the best and beat the best if that were to happen, right? Like, I want him on the field. Yeah,
I think, if you watch Messi has one of his pieces of brilliance and what the X factor is. You can hardly get close enough to this guy to injure him because he's so fast and he makes a move and he's already getting rid of the ball before a nasty tackle comes through. And he's been playing for 20 years and he's been able to avoid big tackles even when he doesn't dive. Some random dad was like, "Hey," this weekend, he's like, "Hey, what do you think about Messi?" I was like, "Yeah, it's great." He's like, he's always dove a little bit too much for me. I was like, okay,
just ridiculous. That guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Okay, so you're an idiot. Thanks for letting me know before we have the rest of this conversation. Thanks for letting me know that you have
absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, this conversation's over. See you later.
How do you think they should handle it, Dan?
I think that what you guys are, I agree with what you're saying. I think it's really tough to get anywhere near him to begin with. And I don't think that this league is in the same place as when it was with Beckham's arrival. So
you don't think Troy Dyack is out there just looking to wreck people?
That's your boy, dude.
Is there a Dima Kovalenko waiting in the wings?
Dude, anytime Gordo needs to bring up a player from the past, it's just an absolute hatchet. He goes right to Troy Dyack.
It's crazy because Troy Dyack probably listened to our last pod and was like, the player who fouls the most guys per minute on the field played is Alan Gordon. So pot, meat, kettle.
No, I think, I don't know. I think you guys are probably right. Obviously, nothing's ever going to be official, but you're protecting an investment, number one. But I do think that it does tend to skew towards a competitive advantage for Miami, but they're paying for that, right? They're paying a lot of money. It's that part of it is an interesting part of it because you're seeing, I think, professional sports and entertainment probably change in a way that's never been really in its past. Like this guy has a piece of everything that's going to happen, from television to jerseys to sales to ownership, and he's walking amongst the mortal like us.
God, I'd love to get a peek behind the curtains at that contract. And not even for the money factor, just for like the convoluted, complicated nature that I wonder how many lawyers had to work on this contract, honestly.
Oh my gosh.
I don't think do you guys think there's ever been a contract like this in professional sports history?
No, that's what I'm saying. There definitely has not. I mean, and Beckham's was probably the closest thing to it, being able to buy into the league at
and this
nothing.
Is 2.0. Yeah.
Yeah, probably and they had to get more creative with that on what this is. I think he wins a cup, though. I do think that. I think he wins a cup, definitely not this year and probably not next year, but that third year when the roster is completely shaped to fit Leo, and if Busquets is still playing, and adding.
That's the fun part.
However many other zillion dollars that they're going to put into this league from now until then.
I think that's why it's such an interesting question, because it's like a race against time. You just don't know when these guys. First of all, I think Messi and Busquets are super professional, and I don't think there's a question of them being motivated. Like, I don't think they're going to mail it in. But
no.
I think it's just a question of, like, these two have played at the peak performance of this sport for, like, going on 18, 19 years now. At what point is their body just going to tell them that, like, hey, I'm not doing it anymore? So that, for me, is the biggest question mark, is just how fast can they put the roster together around them that will allow them to shine before their bodies say, nope, we're done.
Well, they're gonna give it everything they got. There's no stopping now.
True.
They're gonna. I mean, and they've been known to break rules, roster rules. So.
Well, what I was going to say, Miami. What I was going to say, though, is the one thing that's always consistent with Major League Soccer is that the rules change every single year. And that's the most consistent thing that we know.
The rules will be changing. I know
the rules will be changing.
So will they make a rule to help them out? The old Beckham.
What are you talking about? They're not.
No,
gonna,
in terms
they're
of
going to make. I think they're going to make a rule that benefits the whole league. But yes, it's going to help Miami out. Yes,
that's what I'm saying.
Yes, you're right, Gordo. You're right.
Salary adjustments, and that will definitely happen.
Yeah.
All right, that's enough for today. I'm interested to see which one of your teammates, Dax, is the first to run up to Lionel Messi to steal his jersey. My money's on you, but my money's on you having a side deal before the game starts with their kit man and a secret little yes, no, maybe note heading into the Miami locker room. And I'm not going to give you an opportunity to respond to that. We'll see what happens in August.